I'm Alan Spears with Occupy Democrats, and in some breaking news, we have just received a major update about President Biden's health. Now, as many of you are very well aware, the president's job is incredibly stressful, and it requires a great deal of attention to one's health. Strength of body and mind are both incredibly important for the commander-in-chief, and needless to say, it is incredibly important for them, along with the rest of their staff and cabinet, to be at the top of their game. Now, recently there have been growing concerns for both candidates, as both of them are fairly advanced aged. With Donald Trump being 78 and President Biden being 81, these two are the oldest candidates we've ever had on a ticket for the presidency. While President Biden's health is a little bit easier to diagnose and approach, the same cannot be said for Donald Trump, as so very often he lies about quite literally everything. It was seen that Trump is constantly confusing places, seems incredibly angry and yells a lot and lashes out, and these are actually all very classic signs of early onset dementia. And that's just one aspect of why it makes it so difficult to try to diagnose someone like Trump. If they're constantly lying, if they're constantly behaving in such a way that resembles an illness or some sort of psychological disorder, it's hard to tell where that's a disease and where that's personality and where one begins and where one ends. President Biden is a little bit easier to diagnose and work with, however. Rather than throwing a tantrum on stage or consistently lying and acting frankly deranged, he's a little bit more composed and put together. Despite all this, there have still been growing concerns about President Biden's mental acuity as well as physical capabilities. The presidency requires a great deal of energy, both physically and mentally, so it is incredibly important for President Biden to be on his A game. And that is actually what brings us into our breaking story today, as there have been a growing number of people who vocalized their concerns for President Biden. We recently saw ultimately a false tweet talking about the president having some sort of medical emergency on Air Force One. This was proven to be false. However, we did also recently learn that a number of different doctors have been visiting the White House. Even in just my own experience, I've seen a ton of speculation about what this doctor's visit might mean for President Biden. Does he have Parkinson's? Is he dying? Did he have a stroke? It's any number of different things. But the truth is actually much more simple, and what we're going to talk about today. We have recently just received a letter that was made public by President Biden's own personal doctor, Dr. Kevin O'Connor. According to this recently publicized letter from Dr. O'Connor, it would seem that President Biden's health is actually doing just fine, shy of a few minor hiccups. Now, in this letter, Dr. O'Connor mentions that President Biden has actually been seeing another specialist, Dr. Kevin Cannard. To provide some highlights from this letter, quote, I wanted to share with you background on why Dr. Kevin Cannard visited the White House. To protect patient privacy for the thousands of patients of the White House Medical Unit and the physicians who treat them, normally we do not disclose the names of the specialists we work with. However, in the interest of accuracy, I have obtained permission from the President and Dr. Cannard to confirm the details I am sharing. An extremely detailed neurologic exam was again reassuring in that there were no findings which would be consistent with any cerebellar or other central neurological disorder, such as a stroke, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, or ascending lateral sclerosis, nor are there any signs of cervical myelopathy. This exam did again support a finding of peripheral neuropathy in both feet. No motor weakness was detected. He exhibits no tremor, either at rest or with activity. He demonstrates excellent fine motor dexterity, but a subtle difference in heat/cold sensation could be elicited as it was last year. This heat/cold sensation deficit was detected a couple of inches higher on his ankle/calf this year, which is not unexpected. There may, in fact, be day-to-day subjective variation of these findings, as during last year's exam, this area of sensation deficit was actually found to be smaller than the year before. Seeing patients at the White House is something that Dr. Cannard has been doing for a dozen years. Dr. Cannard was chosen for this responsibility not because he is a movement disorder specialist, but because he is a highly trained and highly regarded neurologist here at Walter Reed. So basically, what this is telling us is that with regards to President Biden's neurology and his motor functions, he is doing just fine. These wild speculations and claims that President Biden was maybe secretly suffering from Parkinson's or had a sort of tremor or was in any way inhibited in this manner are false. Now, honestly, this seems like a really good move for President Biden to start disclosing some of this health information and these health updates and reports. There have seemingly been mixed messages that have come from the White House these past few months, especially following the debate, and it was really kind of unclear as to where President Biden stood in terms of his health. But if he and his medical staff are willing to release these sorts of reports or these letters and try to give the public a little bit more detailed information about his physical and mental health, it's going to do wonders in kind of quelling some of the fear and concerns that have sort of popped up as of late. Now, it should be noted too that we have pretty much not seen anything like this from the other side with Donald Trump. Oh, sure, we've heard him say like, oh, he's visited his doctor. He was the healthiest president. He's the healthiest man alive, I'm sure, if you asked him. But truth of the matter is, Donald Trump's diet doesn't exactly do him any favors, and I think that his recent public behavior and his kind of meandering statements and bizarre claims warrant a medical investigation. Trump has proven time and time again through both his actions and his words that he is simply mentally unfit to serve as the commander-in-chief. The president shouldn't be golfing for 10 days straight. They should be running the country. All that said, it is nice to start to see that Biden's administration is starting to take these sorts of claims seriously and is starting to kind of help inform the general public about where President Biden stands with regards to his health. This is just a first step, and if I were them, I would continue to try to push out these reports and demonstrate to the public that President Biden is just as fit and capable as anyone to lead this great country. But of course, we'll be covering this story as it develops, so make sure you subscribe for more.